you really have to learn how to not take things personally because, uh, it's inevitable you're going to get rejection. You're going to get tons of rejection. Tons of investors are going to tell you no. Some of them will say like, "There's just no possible way this is going to work," and really kind of make you feel like, "Oh my gosh, like what am I doing here?"
Welcome to this week's episode of Zero to a Million, brought to you by Unstack. I'm your host, Zach Rego. Today I'm joined by Andrew Goei, co-founder of Ketchup Labs, a full-service startup studio, also co-founder of PitchPages, a tool that makes it easy for founders to build their pitch and manage their entire fundraising process. Brought Andrew on today to join us after the investor series to actually help founders come up with, an investor pitch deck that is strategically put together. He's done a lot of research on the subject. And two, an investor pitch deck that is easily editable, easily shareable, and really easy to get in front of investors. On a previous episode, we talked to Charlie Hipwood, and he mentioned one of his favorite ways to invest was just by being on a monthly or quarterly investor update and really getting to know the startup and the founder. So I wanted to ask Andrew to help us out with the best ways to put together that pitch. So Andrew, thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Zach. I really appreciate you having me on here.
So I was doing some research in preparation, as we do when we prepare for a podcast episode. Have you ever worked for anybody else, or did you just get out of college and say, I'm going to figure out some way to make money doing something? Because it seems like you got started in entrepreneurship pretty early.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of always been in my head. My father was a venture capitalist for a while growing up, so it definitely was always in my head. When I was in high school, I started my first business. It was called Web du Jour. Me and my neighbor actually got in on it together. We were, I guess I must have been like 13 years old or something at the time. And we decided we would start learning how to build websites. But back then, you didn't have all these website builders. You didn't have anything like Unstack. And so we were trying to learn programs like Dreamweaver and Flash. And we were just kids, but we had a whole bunch of time on our hands. And so we kind of just did it over the summer. We called it Web du Jour. And we started going out and just trying to talk to local businesses like chiropractors and stuff to do their websites. It didn't last too long, we were kids. And so we built these fancy computers to run this business that we had. And these computers were really good, right, at the time, right? Not compared to what we have now, but then video games became a priority. So it was, we were in high school, and entrepreneurship back then isn't really what it is today. I mean, it's pushed really hard on students and just people in general, like the entrepreneurship, right? And so I've always had the mentality. When I graduated from college, I truthfully didn't really know what to do. I graduated with a finance degree, and obviously I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to figure out how to get down that path. But I graduated. I got into finance first, and then slowly kind of worked my way out of that. So it wasn't something that I did immediately out of college. I went to go work for a life insurance company, actually. I was a life insurance rep for a little bit. I used that as a tool to essentially teach me how to sell. It pretty much was a sales boot camp for a year. It was really interesting. Then I started to work for a startup. Actually, before that, I went to go work at Google, and I was there for a week, actually. And I couldn't stand it. It was huge. The place was massive. I loved the free food and all that, and that was great. There's a joke over there that they always talk about, like when you get there, like if you're a newbie over there, they call you a noogler. And so it was like the noogler like 15 or something, where everybody that's new at Google, like that first year, they gained like 15-20 pounds from all the free food. But it wasn't really my scene. I thought it was really cool. It was incredibly fascinating. They have a lot of structure. I mean, there's thousands of people that work there. The campus was massive, and it just wasn't for me. When you're an entrepreneur, you have that mindset of an entrepreneur. When you don't want to just do one thing. You want to do 10 things. You want to learn. You want to get to experience things, and I ended up getting an offer at a startup about a week after I started at Google, and then I just told them, I was like, all right, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but I'm gonna have to leave. And so I left.
Your interview process was probably longer than the time you were there, right? Their interview process is pretty rigorous.
Yeah, it was actually. I had a few interviews. I remember that for sure. And the orientation was very overwhelming. But yeah, so I left Google. I went to go work for a little startup at the time. It was it was like a 5-person team. So I got to do a lot. I got to learn a lot. It was really awesome. Our office was in a warehouse in Mountain View, California. It was really cool. And we shared that warehouse with a few other companies. And there was this other startup in that warehouse, and they were building they built a mobile app that would do messaging across data. And so, at the time, I didn't really think too much about it. I was kind of thinking like, well, why would I need this app when I can just text anybody? But I'm here in America, like everybody, all my friends, everybody's in the United States for the most part. I wasn't really thinking about, overseas. And so anyways, they a couple times they would come over and like they would show us the app, show us what they were working on. Anyway, long story short, that company was WhatsApp.
Yep, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. So it was wild, man. I mean, I think there was only 2 of them. I think there was 2 or 3 of them that were working there in the some cubicles in the warehouse that we shared. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of went off a tangent here, but yeah, entrepreneurship is just something that's always been in my head. I want to dictate my life. I want to dictate what I do, and the time and the money that I put into the things I do, I want them to be invested in myself. So it's, yeah, I've just always had that mentality.
So you make your way through a few startups. Believe you have a successful exit somewhere in the middle there. You now are at, running Ketchup Labs, which I think is a really cool, take on really supporting the startup community and probably imparting some wisdom on startups. Take me through some of the challenges you're helping these startups sort out. Like when they come and knock on your door, like what are the things that they're like hard-hitting, pressing issues that they're bringing to the table?
Yeah, well, most of our clients, most of the founders or entrepreneurs that come to us are, they're kind of getting into this space for the first time. So our whole goal is just helping them navigate through, these uncharted territories. There's a lot to learn, and startup life is a lot harder than I think a lot of people really understand. Because of where we're at today, like I said, back when I was in college or growing up, entrepreneurship wasn't really pushed on youth, as it is today in students. And but now, like I said, we live in this world where, people see on TechCrunch, all these unicorn companies that are getting billion-dollar exits and going public. And I mean, everybody's like everybody thinks like, oh my God, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go build a startup and I'm going to have this billion-dollar exit. And there's just so much work that goes into it. There's a lot of sacrifice. You're going to hit a lot of points, a lot of times in that process, where you want to give up. Even like when it comes down to fundraising, you really have to learn how to not take things personally, because it's inevitable. You're going to get rejection. You're going to get tons of rejection. Tons of investors are going to tell you no. Some of them will say like, there's just no possible way this is going to work, and really kind of make you feel like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing here? But you got to be persistent, and you got to you really have to try to not let it get to you personally. If you're doing the research and you're putting in the work, then we want to be there to support you and help you overcome some of these obstacles. And a big part of what we do, honestly, is somewhat motivation and therapy at the same time. Kind of reminding the founders and entrepreneurs that we work with, what they're capable of and the reason why they're doing these things. What's the purpose? Always don't forget about your purpose and why you want to do this. And we just help them along the way. Making sure that anything from making sure that their company is structured in the right way to what are the best ways to try to build an MVP or acquire your first customers. I mean, we've been through it already, so we just understand the pain, and so it's a little bit of a combination of mentorship, helping through some obstacles, and providing some motivation at the same time, to be honest. But yeah, so that's what we do for the most part.
So, in your experience, I assume, throughout some of the startups you founded, you've had to raise money. Your dad was a VC, so you've probably seen the other side of him, either turning down potentially good deals or signing up for good deals. Take me through some of the experiences of your fundraising, being out on the trail, getting rejected. We hear about these stories, and I think founders more recently I've seen be really transparent about when and how they got turned down, especially now that they're succeeding. I think Gumroad recently did a really cool job of being totally transparent on their failures and now their successes. But would love to hear some of your experience, when you were a founder trying to get out there and raise money and get rejected.
Yeah, and even to this day, I still take rejection personally. Even though I tell everybody not to. I still take rejection. It totally is. It totally is. It's great to be in the business of giving advice. Yeah. So, where do I start? I started, trying to raise money for my first startup. I think it was back in 2010. And it was tough. I had some help, and we did pretty well. We actually got investors in Asia, and we set up a company in Singapore, which was really cool. At the time, Singapore was just a really great place actually to start a company because of the grants that you could get. But it truthfully never gets easier. My own ventures. We've raised money for, I believe 4 of my own ventures, and then I've helped some other companies. And every single time it's the same thing. You always have to put in a little bit of work into it and just understand that it's somewhat of a full-time job. But through the experience, you kind of understand that you actually have to try to get in front of investors a little bit earlier than you think. In a way, you want an investor to see your story and to see the progress that you're making, even if they're not ready to invest in you right away. Because if you meet an investor for the very first time and you show them your pitch deck and it shows some milestones and stuff, they're still just meeting you for the first time. And so you really have to try to figure out how to bring them back up to speed with where you started and how you got to where you're at, because a lot of times investors will base their decision off of you and your team and that trust factor. And so if they meet you for the very first time, there's zero trust, right? They don't know you. So you have to build that trust by giving them your backstory and hopefully paint a good picture through your pitch deck. But like I said, so if you can get in front of an investor and just kind of show them what they're doing, just say, I'm working on this. This is where we're at, and just you kind of bring them along that process. Even if they're not ready to invest, there's a good chance they might be ready to invest in 4 or 5 months when they see what you're able to accomplish. And because of the fact that you reached out to them a little bit earlier on and just kind of kept updating them and showed them your progress, you're building a relationship with them. And at the end of the day, if anyone's going to give you any money for your startup, then a lot of it's going to be based on trust. They gotta feel like they trust that you're gonna deliver, and that's a really good way to do it. It's a numbers game. If you're trying to get one investor, you're gonna have to talk to 50. So it truly is a numbers game. If you've got a good product out there or you have a good idea, that you validated in some way, whether it's through some case studies, research, a private beta, then you're already off to a good start. And it really just it's a numbers game. You gotta get out there. You gotta get out there. You gotta talk to as many people as you can. You gotta get on pitch competitions. You gotta go to events. You gotta be ready. And you just gotta be energetic, and you gotta be enthusiastic, and just gotta keep going.
So that's a good segue into what every pitch should include. And you mentioned a few of the pieces along the way there, but I think all of the PitchPages decks start with the big idea, right? And it's the genesis and the thesis behind why the business should exist.
Yeah.
You start there, why, and then you've kind of built a flow that I think is pretty consistent across all the pitch decks. Would love to talk through your thought process on that flow and how that gets the investors to get excited, enthusiastic, and engaged, before they even understand projections and milestones, which you really kind of bury at the end, which I think is where investors probably are looking for that data to support it.
Yeah. So, I would say actually there's actually a pretty big misunderstanding on what the purpose of a pitch is, or a pitch deck. A lot of founders go into it thinking that their pitch deck is what is like literally going to get them their investment. And at a high level, like, you're using a pitch deck to get investment. So the answer is yes, it is for that purpose. But when you really think about it, the true purpose of sending out a pitch deck to an investor is really just to get the interest and get them on the phone. It's highly unlikely that you will send out a pitch deck to an investor, say through email, and that investor replies back and says, "I'm in. I'll give you $100,000. Let's do it." It's not going to happen. And so you have to get in the mindset and understand that what the true purpose of getting this pitch deck out is just to get the interest, because you want to be able to get them on the phone where you can start building that relationship and really dive into some of the more details and be able to answer some of those questions. So with this thought in mind, now you can prevent yourself from throwing up in your pitch deck. What I mean is by putting too much stuff. And that is one of the biggest problems we see with new founders and their pitch decks. Usually when we get a new client and we go through their deck, it could be 30 slides, and that's just way too many. Most investors, I think there's actually a research study that was done, and most investors, angel investors, typically wouldn't spend more than like 2 to 3 minutes on a pitch deck. They kind of have an idea if they want to talk to you or not just after those first few slides. And so it's really important at a high level just to make sure that your pitch is very clean and concise and simple. You just don't want to have too much stuff on there, because you can reserve that information for a phone call. And so that's kind of what we tried to translate into PitchPages. It's almost like, I want to use an analogy, but not everyone's going to know what this place is. But I call it the In-N-Out analogy. In-N-Out is a burger joint. I don't know if they're everywhere in the US or around the world. I think they're regional. But we got them out here in the West Coast. I'm in LA. And they have 3 items on their menu. And so it kind of makes that decision process a lot easier. And so if you can take that same psychology and apply it to pitching, then you're going to get some good results. And so what we did with PitchPages is we force the founders to really learn how to consolidate all of their information into a nice, clean format in a good flow. It prevents them from being able to throw up on the investor with too much information, because we don't let them. If we go through the back end, like the dashboard or the page wizard that founders would use our app for, each section is broken down and you can only do certain types of things. So it helps just keep the focus on what is most important and what is going to be the most impactful information that you could give to an investor who just needs to take a quick glance, be able to see what you're all about as quickly as possible, and be able to navigate your pitch as well to find the information they're looking for, to be able to make a decision if they want to get on the phone or if they want to request more information. And so the flow of the pitch, when we are training people, we like to recommend actually that you stand in front of a mirror and you do your whole entire pitch and you record it, and then listen to yourself and watch yourself. And a lot of people won't do that, and they don't understand how effective it is to actually see even if you're just going to be pitching, this is a new era, right? So a lot of stuff is just virtual. Nobody's meeting up in front of each other. But even just on a virtual pitch, you should record yourself and then check to see, how are you presenting? What are your mannerisms like? Are you like this? Are you like, back here? And that all goes into it as well. And but when the most important thing is when you watch yourself pitch, you can actually tell if it flows or not. Like if you're kind of bouncing around in your slides and you go from like your I guess maybe if you started with your revenue model first, and then after that you bounced into like your IP or patents. I mean, it doesn't really work. And so when you're telling the story and you watch yourself tell a story, and you're segueing from one section of your pitch to another, you'll be able to tell very quickly whether or not it flows. And that's a really good way to test, sort of A/B test your own pitch. But yeah, I would say that we try to stick to a standard format. You want to have your hero section, that big impact, what are you doing? What's your startup? A great idea is to put a founder intro video. A lot of accelerators and incubators require like a 2-minute founder intro video, because like I said, investors want to know who you are. You got to build that trust. So that's a really good way to utilize that first section of your pitch page. Then you want to get into that big idea, highlighting, what are the big problems and your solutions that surround that big idea, and then go from there. Some of the stuff can be reordered, as long as you're practicing it and it does flow, then it's okay. And as long as you're also just focusing on what are the big impact statements, and just don't have fluff, right? So just kind of consolidate it, keep it clean and concise. And yeah, everything in PitchPages is pretty much already in the format that is a nice little top-down approach, from everything that you're doing down to where you get into your milestones and your revenue model. Everything it flows a lot better when you do that. And yeah, so I mean, we've done it a lot for sure. We've done a lot of pitches, pitch decks, and this is the whole reason why, pretty much, why we started PitchPages, to help founders. We want to stop them from sending out these 40-page slide decks.
So when you think about right, there's a pitch deck that's built for almost lead gen, right? You're shooting it out, not to every investor, but you're distributing it to, let's say, 50 investors to hopefully set up 10 calls to hopefully get 1 or 2 investments, let's say. How do you coach up a founder on that pitch evolving from something that's succinct, big idea, let's get the next meeting, to, okay, now I'm presenting, right, to 10. I imagine that's a little bit longer form. You're obviously bringing a lot more context in what you're talking about, to then, hopefully closing. How are you coaching founders through kind of that process so that they're thinking about the stages differently and how they're presenting the business?
Just to make sure I understand your question, you're asking how does a founder get from like that first pitch to actually closing the deal?
Yeah, I guess, how does the pages evolve? Like, I imagine it has to be a little bit longer form once you've scheduled the call and you're about to bring the investors through your business model.
Yeah, no, okay, great question. I'm glad you asked, actually. This actually goes back to, when I was talking about the misunderstanding of the purpose of a pitch, because there's actually different types of pitches, and each pitch has its own purpose. So for instance, if you were to email your pitch to an investor, that's a completely different pitch than what you would pitch in a live pitch presentation, right? So if you're my investor that I'm pitching to right now, and we were doing a screen share and I had my deck, I would probably show you something different than what I emailed you, because I'm heavy on the phone. So now I can paint a better story with each slide. I can make it flow. And so pitches that you email versus pitches that you're pitching live are different. Even a pitch page, the purpose of a pitch page is slightly different too. And that's why on a pitch page in our application, we actually included a section on the pitch page that we call the digital deal room. And this is where investors get to do all of their due diligence. And so if you look at a pitch page, and the purpose of it is just like, hey, here's our quick pitch. Do you want to learn more information about what we do? And when you scroll down, you might see a download section. And that download section is where you could host, maybe you want to host a detailed 20 to 30 slide pitch deck there, because if the investor already has some interest, they already know what you do based on your pitch page. Now they can download your 30-page deck and they can really just dive into it. Any seasoned investor is going to want to do some kind of a due diligence. And so that's what that whole section really is for. You can add in your 3 to 5 year financial projections. You can upload your patents or any other intellectual property that you might have. Case studies, they're a really great thing to provide to investors to help them with their decision, or any research or anything like that. And you can put it all there. And so that is essentially, that's where investors will perform their due diligence and be able to get more information. So that's why, with the pitch page, we just keep it simple. You don't have to put all the stuff in there. You just put it in your download section. And that's where investors can do their due diligence.
Okay. And then I guess keeping investors engaged, you mentioned this earlier, right? Like you're going to start with 50 to get one.
Yeah.
Right? There's 49 that chose not to invest. But that doesn't mean...
There's 49 that told you, no way, get out of here.
Right. Which is hard, right?
Yeah.
But, and I've heard this before, and we have an episode that, is going to come out right before this one where the investor literally says, like, I want to keep informed, right? Like, I want to know, even though I said no now, like, I want to know what's going on. What have you been coaching your founders up on from you've built this Rolodex, you've been reaching out, like what's the engagement time like that they spend after they get the no to just keep those investors involved in the business in some way?
Sure. A lot of this is related to just sales, like best practices with sales. There's ways that you can go about sales where you're a little too spammy, which happens a lot. And then there's really good ways where you're like politely persistent. You know what I'm saying? Where you're checking in and you're updating, but you're not being spammy. And so that's really what we try to tell our founders, or that's what we try to practice ourselves. You also want to be careful of, saving all of your big wins into one big announcement. If you have, say, 5 wins, right, 5 milestones that you've achieved over the course of, a few months, you want to make sure that over the course of those few months, you're letting all the investors know that you're talking to, what you've been up to. Don't wait until 3 months and give them this massive list of accomplishments, because now you're going to have nothing left. Now you're going to have to go do the same thing. You're going to go build up for the next 5 or 6 months, and some of these investors may even actually just forget about you. So you want to be consistent. Anytime you have a little win, it's a nice touch. And if you feel like you're really ready, a great way to get an investor back on is just hit them up and say, we've accomplished some really great things over the past few weeks. I would love to share them with you. I think you're gonna like what you see. Would you mind just hopping on a call real quick so we can show you what we've done and the progress that we've made? And those are just really good ways to get an investor back on without really telling them too much. That way you can force the opportunity to talk to them on the phone and share with them what you've been doing. Obviously, you're going to get some investors that are like, I don't have time for that. Just send me the updates. And that's okay. Every investor is different, and you really have to treat investors kind of like, you got to get to know them, and you got to know their tendencies. And it's kind of like dating, right? And some investors, are going to be more than happy to get on the phone and just hear you out. And some just, want to do it a different way. So you kind of just take it as it comes. But for the most part, when it comes to, keeping an investor engaged, yeah, you want to be consistent. You at least want to have some kind of a touch, at least every month. If you could do it a couple times, that'd be great. But at least every month, you want to be doing some kind of a touch with some updates. Anything that any kind of milestones or accomplishments that you've achieved, in that past 30 days. It's a really good practice. So as long as you're doing that, then you're going to be able to maintain staying in front of them, staying in their head or in the back of their head, and keep maintaining that relationship.
Last question we ask every guest, and I'm excited for your answer on this one. I see you got a book right behind you. Two
Yeah.
books you recommend every entrepreneur reads, and if you've got any that are specific to raising capital or funny stories of raising capital, that'd be pertinent.
Yeah. So I would say my two books that I would probably recommend. Obviously, this is one of my favorite books. I'll disclose this one first, actually, because this is if you're doing a startup, you're probably gonna have to raise money, right, at some point. And every single new founder that I work with, I mean, this is all new to them. They have no idea what they're getting themselves into. They don't understand valuations. They don't understand how valuations work. They don't understand how that affects, ownership and cap tables, or term sheets and all that stuff, or the different ways that you can fundraise. And this book is actually just this is a great book that every founder should just have and read. This is a third edition. So this is Venture Deals. I think they have a new edition out. I've had this one for quite a few years now. But different methods of fundraising keep popping up, and so there's probably a new edition. I would highly recommend reading Venture Deals. I still have my notes and everything in there. The other one actually is one of my favorite books of all time, and I think that this applies extremely well. Not just in your professional life as an entrepreneur or a founder, but even your personal life. And you've probably heard of this book, but it's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And there's a psychological aspect in that book that you learn about and you kind of get to understand. And when you apply that to everything you do, I think you're setting yourself up for not just a life of happiness, but I think you're setting yourself up to be more ready for success, and you're going to create opportunities a little bit more. There's a saying that also goes around, you got to create your own luck, and it's true. I mean, luck is luck, but at the same time, if you can put yourself in a position where your chances of luck are a little bit more increased, then you're creating your own luck, right? You're creating your own opportunities. So I think that book is a good one to read, and Venture Deals for sure. I think, and then 0 to 1 is a good one. Just it talks about literally the process of when you're starting up, getting that first customer, getting that first dollar in the door, and what that means and how that validates what you're doing. So
I love that book. It's funny you say that, the How to Make Friends or How to Win Friends and Influence People. No one's recommended that. We're 30 something episodes in. We've got probably 100 books on our list, and that's
no kidding. I was sitting here thinking is this gonna be am I gonna get laughed at?
No,
everybody says that.
No. We've had the Lean Startup a bunch of times. We've had Traction a bunch of times. I think everyone's been thinking very business book, and that is a business book, and it's definitely about pitching people and building relationships, which is what we're talking about. So super relevant and interesting that no one said it. 0 to 1's an awesome book, by the way, too. That's one of my
awesome
favorites.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it depends on how you apply what you're learning from these books, and I think that there's just a lot that you can apply from that book just to every day, but especially your professional life. So
love it. And I got one last question for those on video. There's a shoe in the background, or for those in audio, there's a shoe in the background. I have no idea what it's from.
Okay.
What's the deal with the shoe?
I might get a bunch of haters now. It really depends. It really depends if you're a fan of Steph Curry or not. But yeah, these are Steph Curry's shoes. They just came out actually not too long ago. They were for his birthdays. His kids actually designed them. So his kids' names are inside, and they designed it for his birthday, which was actually on Pi Day. So it was actually just a couple weeks ago. I'm just a huge fan of Steph Curry. I think that I just love everything about, kind of his story and what he brought to, to his profession, right? Which is the NBA, which is professional basketball. He's somebody that, this is actually really good. Something to talk about. This is really good. He's somebody, in my personal opinion, that, which I think is the opinions of a lot of people, that he sort of, nobody really believed in him. They looked at his size. They thought he's going to break his ankles. He's not going to go anywhere. He's too small. And look what he's achieved. And same thing with startups, man. Same thing with founders. You know, a lot of people are going to put you down. A lot of people are going to tell you can't do it. But look at this guy. You know, I mean, he's smaller. He's smaller than most of the guys out there. But you know, he's the only unanimous MVP. So
I was in, what year was it? I was probably a couple years out of college, but I was still in North Carolina after I graduated from NC State when he made the run while he was at Davidson in the NCAA tournament, and it was like he couldn't miss. It was the most electric, like,
yeah, that's pretty
basketball run. I remember watching him play, just like every shot he took, it went in, and it was just insane. And like LeBron was in the stands for his game.
Yeah.
Totally changed, you know, Davidson's footprint on college basketball for a brief moment there. But awesome. Well, I'm glad I asked. See,
right on.
We'll put this in the YouTube, and everyone can get a look at Steph Curry's birthday.
Right on. Awesome.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining me, man. This was a lot of fun. Where can everyone find you to connect and you know, learn more about PitchPages and Ketchup Labs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can contact us on our websites. You can go to ketchuplabs.com. You can email me at andrew@ketchuplabs.com. And yeah, check out PitchPages. PitchPages.io is the domain. And we're currently in a private beta, so we're just really testing with everybody right now and getting feedback. And in that process, we're actually, you know, putting time in and helping people too. So we're doing one-on-ones with everybody that joins up. So yeah, I encourage you to check it out and sign up, and we'll set up a one-on-one, and we'll have a chat and learn a little bit more about your business. So yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Cheers.